Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the April 16th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today will be Sheila Gurry. We also have the following councillors attending electronically: Councillors Armstrong and Gesselbrock. Welcome. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question on a matter that was considered by the committee today, please sign up on the sheet located by on the table to the top doors by my left. And please note also that the Council Procedure Bylaw states questions may only be taken on staff reports or other business items. Not seeing any members of the public here this morning, I'm not going to read the usual notice out loud. Next item then is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please, we have one.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For late items today, we are just removing agenda item 10A, correspondence from Nanaimo Airport Commission regarding funding support for hosting the snowbirds in August 2025. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Hemmons, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We're on to item 6, reports, the 2024 annual financial statements. And Ms. Mercer, good morning. You'll introduce that, please.
Good morning. So as you know, under legislation in the Community Charter, financial statements must be approved by Council and submitted to the province before May 15th of each year. So in accordance with this section, we are here to present the 2024 annual financial statements and request that Council accept them. I will turn it over to Ms. Bates-Emer from KPMG to take you through the 2024 audit findings report, and then Mr. Bailey will go through some of the highlights of the statement. So I'll pass it over to Ms. Liette.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Ms. Bates-Emer, and you and Ms. Burden. Welcome, both of you, to Council. Not your first appearance.
Good morning, everyone. So I think we have a presentation to go with this. Yeah, so you probably all have met or seen Sarah before as well. She's been the senior manager on the file for several years. Going on to the first page there, I'll just report on the status of our audit. So we are complete. We've received all of the evidence we need to draw our conclusions, and we're ready to sign our report. Basically, after we have the discussion with Council today, or the committee today, and then once Council approves the financial statements, which we anticipate will be on May 5th, we will be in a position to sign our audit opinion. The audit opinion is included in the draft financial statements. You'll see again, it's a clean opinion that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with the, there it goes, I have control, in accordance with the public sector accounting standards. Just a reminder that when we say in all material respects, we did report to you at the planning stage that the materiality we were going to use in this audit was 4.4 million. And with the materiality at that level, we did promise to report back to you on any differences that we find throughout our work that are greater than 220,000. So you'll see in a minute any reporting of differences. Okay, you can't hear me. I can report that we received full cooperation from management. This is a very smooth audit. You have a strong team, well-resourced, and you know, providing us all the information that we need in a timely manner to let this run smoothly. I'll also report that we're independent in our work as your auditors. We do that at the beginning and at the end of our audit. In terms of the risks that we had identified in the planning stage of this audit, there was really only one significant risk, which is the one that's required to be identified in all audits, which is fraud risk due to management override of controls. We addressed this risk with looking at journal entries, significant estimates, and any unusual transactions. We have nothing to report from our work around looking at this risk. The areas of audit focus that we had reported in our plan listed there. I'll just give you the highlights of the findings there or the procedures that we do. So for revenues and receivables, we're doing sort of a mix of procedures, being what we call vouching. So for the significant grants, government grants that you're getting, we're looking at the letters, looking at any restrictions in the letters, checking that you've reported that appropriately. And then certain areas of revenue, we can do analytical procedures, so predict what the revenue might be based on, for example, tax rates, and assessment values, that type of thing. For expenditures, regular expenditures, we can perform analytical procedures against budget, against prior year, and then test the cutoff that you've captured all of the expenses related to 2024 in 2024. Salaries and benefits, we can perform, again, their analytical procedures to assess whether or not the wage expense is in line with what we would expect based on changes in your collective agreement and changes in headcount of employees. For the employee future benefits, we do look at the report that you receive from your actuaries on the calculation of the estimated future liabilities for employee benefits. And capital assets, so large numbers obviously running through there. We're testing the additions incurred in the year, so going and looking at the invoices for the items that you've capitalized, recalculating amortization or doing an analytical procedure over amortization. We look at any of the WIP accounts that you have, work in progress, so projects that are not yet being amortized, that are having additions put into them as the project is worked on, and when that is completed, that it flips into completed projects and then amortization commences. No issues coming out of those. And then cash, investments, and debt, basically all of these areas we confirm with third parties to ensure that you've appropriately reported those amounts, and then we check the disclosures. So from throughout all of this work, we did identify, I say we, management identified, and we identified a couple of differences that are in the financial statements right now. So the one identified by management is just an issue with the Explore Recreation accounting system, that once, when you book recreational facilities, the system records an accounts receivable and a deferred revenue at the time of booking. Yet you haven't received any money for that, and the booking could be canceled. So the system sort of grosses up the receivables and the deferred revenue. And so those need to be backed out for the things that are just bookings, not actual services that have yet to be provided or that are being provided. So management determined that and pulled and identified there was $785 of overstatement in both of those accounts. In 2023, the 2024 accounts have appropriately removed those future bookings from the 2024 numbers. And then the other difference in here is just a minor difference in the treatment of certain grants, specifically the climate action grants, that the government transfers section, I guess it's KPMG's opinion that the government transfers section would require deferral of these grants until spent on the purposes outlined in the grant agreement, so the eligible expenses. And so if you had deferred the grant until the eligible expenses were incurred, there would have been a change in the revenue recognized in 2023 of $178,000 less revenue, and then in 2024, $466,000 less revenue. These grants have appropriately been restricted by the city in a reserve account. So no issues in terms of spending a grant on what it's not supposed to be spent on. It's just that the government transfers accounting standard would say that the unspent grants should be in deferred revenue, which is a liability account, rather than in a reserve account, which is an equity account. The only other thing, I can't go forward. Oh, there we go. Control observations. So you'll see here we did not identify any significant deficiencies in internal controls, nor do we have any other observations to note for council. Just for your information, we're not doing fulsome control testing of all of your processes here, but if we were to identify control deficiencies throughout our audit procedures, in gaining an understanding of the financial reporting process or in any of the substantive work that we're doing, that would come up here, and nothing came to light during the procedures this year. So there are, in the back of our findings reports or planning reports, we always identify if there's any future accounting standards that are coming up that would impact the city. There isn't anything until 2027, so quite a few more years until the conceptual framework and the financial statement presentation standards comes into play. The financial statement presentation will likely result in a different look of your statement of financial position and a different look of the new statement of net debt, net financial assets. That's a ways out. There was, if you remember from the plan, there was one new standard this year, which was the revenue accounting standard, in which the public sector accounting standards provided some guidance on revenue recognition for areas that wasn't already defined in the standards. And so management did assess the new revenue standard against the way that you were treating those items that did not already have guidance in PSAB. And there was basically no changes to the way that you were doing things. So that the new standard applicable for this year has been appropriately adopted. There was two other new standards which had no impact, purchased intangibles and public-private partnerships, which the city doesn't have any, so that wasn't an issue. So that's it from us, and we're happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Councillor Perino. You good?
Sorry, I guess we should do that.
Yes.
Thank you. Just a quick question through you, and I know how good our staff are, and just so thrilled that they're at the helm taking care of our financial business. But always, as part of our due diligence, we need to make sure that we always ask. Was there anything that you saw that was inappropriate or incorrect, or anything that made you stop and question?
No.
Wonderful. Okay.
No. And,
just what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the question could be if we had any disagreements. And,
well, I would expect that, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think we agree to disagree about the treatment of the revenue recognition thing.
Yes.
But like I say, it's a pretty minor thing, and I'm not concerned at all.
Great.
That those amounts hadn't been appropriately restricted.
Of all the
just the geography on the statement of financial position.
Oh, really? Yeah. No. Of all the things to be bothered about, that's a good one. So that's great. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to know our staff are as good as we know they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any questions. It's a good news story. Much appreciate the attendance of both of you this morning. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item would be the motion that the Finance Audit Committee recommendation Council accept the 2024 annual financial statements of the City of Nanaimo. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, presentations, the 2025-2029 financial plan recap and decision points. Ms. Mercer.
Thank you.
Please, and then Ms. Fuller.
Our staff have finished compiling all of the changes between when the provisional budget was adopted in January until now. And Ms. Fuller is going to walk you through all of those changes and where we're sitting at the moment.
Ms. Fuller, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Today, we'd like to update Council on the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. The presentation today reflects changes made since adoption of the provisional budget in January. However, it does not include the impact of the new Nanaimo Art Gallery agreement or the Loudon Park improvement decision, both which you approved last week. Those changes will, however, be incorporated before we bring the financial plan bylaw for approval. Changes made to date include updates to estimates, including final growth numbers, as well as council directives. The 2025 property tax increase is currently 7.7%, which includes 1% for asset management. Included in the 5-year financial plan are 12 new RCMP members over 3 years, 20 new firefighters who started in January of this year, and expansion of the Community Safety Officer program over 2 years. The projected future rates reflect the fact that the debt for the VICC will be ending in 2026 and 2027, and the ending of the 5-year funding commitment that Council previously made for the Nanaimo Systems Planning Organization. Back in December, the 2025 user rate bylaws were adopted by Council, and there has been no changes to these rates. When reviewing our recent property tax increases, it's important to remember that in the last 4 years, so between 2021 and 2024, we began implementation of the new Fire Master Plan that added 20 new career firefighters in 2023. We implemented a 12-person community safety officer program, added 2 community clean teams, and added 16 new RCMP members. Council also added other resources to maintain service levels as the city continued to grow, and we have seen higher than normal inflationary increases. A 7.7% increase is going to be approximately $219 for the average home whose value changed the same as Class 1, or, including user fees, $264. This excludes property taxes the city collects on behalf of other governments, such as the regional district. $3,078 in property taxes includes $2,555 for the day-to-day services. So this is the maintenance of our parks and sports fields, the operation of our recreation and culture facilities, community safety such as police, fire, and our community safety officers, as well as the maintenance of our roads and storm sewer infrastructure. $41 will go to debt servicing for the VICC and Fire Station number 4. $329 will go to reserves. This includes contributions to our General Asset Management Reserve, our Equipment Depreciation Reserve, our IT and Photocopier Reserves, our Climate Action Reserve, our Q Field and Harewood Artificial Turf Field Reserves. And $153, or $8 million, will go to projects. As you will recall, for the provisional budget, you did reduce base project funding for 2025 only by just under $800,000. Breaking down the $2,555 for city services, approximately $646 will go to the RCMP contract. $458 will support Nanaimo Fire Rescue Operations, which includes the provision of 911 services as well as emergency management. We have $453 for Parks, Recreation, and Culture, $284 for Engineering and Public Works, and remember, this doesn't include sewer, water, or most sanitation costs, as those are funded by user fees. We have $280 for Corporate Services. This includes finance, IT, and corporate and business development. And under corporate and business development, we have the operation of the VICC, we have Tourism Nanaimo, and we have Nanaimo Prosperity Corporation. As well, corporate services includes a number of general government budgets, such as committed contingency, where we have set aside funding for a new IAFF contract. As well, that's where our negative contingency sits. Remember, we budgeted for a negative contingency to account for some of those vacancies during the year. We made that decision at provisional. As well, we have grants under corporate services, including NALT and CATNAP, and corporate insurance. Police services at 130 is our municipal employees who support RCMP operations, as well as the operation of the police facilities. Public safety is bylaw, including animal control, community safety officers, and social planning. And finally, city administration is our CAO office, legislative services, and human resources. When you break it all down, you're paying approximately $7 a day for the city services you're receiving.
Before we move on, Ms. Willett, just a couple of points. First, I want to emphasize again for the public that's listening, $7 a day for all the services the city provides on an average home. It's a remarkably low figure in some respects, and I'm not diminishing the concern around taxes. Going back to the property tax history increase, we've obviously seen a fair bit of inflation in the last few years, and that has to be reflected in our rising costs. But and you correct me if I'm wrong, but the cost of the CSOs, which is entirely, I would argue, a result of the street disorder and the failure of senior governments to deal with the mental health addictions and crisis that we have in our streets, etc. What are the CSOs, what's the annual cost for the dozen that we have already, let alone the dozen we're about to hire? Ballpark figure will do. I'm trying to make a political point for anyone who's bothering to listen this morning,
Sorry, I could look that
in
up.
case that wasn't obvious.
Just gonna- There should be like Jeopardy music playing here while I'm looking this up. So in 2024, our actual expenditures for the community safety officer team was 1.45 million.
And is that was, I'm trying to recall, does that cover the full year's expenditures for all dozen?
For 2024, that was our actual expenditures for the operation of the program. And then in 2025, under our budget drivers, we're adding another $500,000 to the budget with the 6 CSOs officers that are starting this year. And that's only a partial year because they're budgeted to start April 1st of this year. And then we'll have 4 more starting in 2026.
And of course, the extra RCMP officers, the 15 officers, positions that have been created as a result of council's 5-year, 3-year average hiring of RCMP. That's included in all of these the percentages that are indicated in the property tax history slide.
Correct.
Just saying for the listening audience at home, this is what provincial downloading, senior government downloading looks like at its worst. Instead of having these monies available, if we were going to tax our citizens for parks and recreation and culture and more acquisitions or building of community facilities or all the other things we could do, we're having to look after the issues that have been foisted on our shoulders and the shoulders of every municipal government in the province. In any event, enough of the whining and the lesson this morning, but I wasn't going to let this pass. Please carry on the financial summary.
So total revenue for the city is budgeted at $276.5 million. This will provide funding for operations, projects, reserves, as well as the Vancouver Island Regional Library. Revenue excludes any new borrowing or transfers from reserves, as those are a funding source, not revenue. At 60.9%, property taxes make up the largest share of the city's revenue. $215.2 million will be spent for annual operating and maintenance. This does not include funding for projects or for the Vancouver Island Regional Library. On this chart, we've broken community services into 3 categories. Community safety, which includes Nanaimo Fire Rescue, public safety, and police services. Then we have parks, recreation, and culture, and the RCMP contract. Community safety at $46.7 million and the RCMP at $36.7 million form a significant portion of the city's operating budget. We've broken out the Port of Nanaimo Centre from corporate services, and the Port of Nanaimo Centre includes the operating costs of both VICC as well as the common areas of the building the city is responsible for, capital replacement, and debt servicing. We've shown sewer and water separately from engineering and public works, and corporate services, in addition to the items I previously mentioned, also includes the expenditure for post-employment benefits, which we fund from reserves, the hotel tax payover funded by MRDT revenue, and the BIA payover. So how did we go from 8% at provisional to 7.7%? In the fall, we identified 6-figure budget drivers for 2025. For final, we have some new budget drivers as well as some changes to previously discussed budget drivers. First off, we have 911 services. This was not previously a budget driver. However, for final budget, we had to increase the budget an additional $14,000 over provisional budget to reflect final contract amounts. This brings the net change over 2024 to $112,000. The Community Safety Officer Expansion Program costs decreased by just over $7,000, and this is the net impact of our operating budget, of our successful Emergency Treatment Fund grant. So as Council is aware, we were successful in that Emergency Treatment Fund grant. A lot of the grant goes towards the purchase of the new vehicles and equipment for our CSOs, but it did have a small impact both up and down on the operating budget, because now we have fleet charges for our new vehicles, but it also paid some expenses. So overall, it reduced operations by $7,000, but it also resulted in more money in your general capital reserve, because that's where we were paying for the vehicles for the new CSO officers from, and now we have a grant for that. We also have a $6,000 decrease for corporate insurance as we received our 2025 MIABC invoice, and it was slightly lower than we had estimated. Another new budget driver is a decrease of $135,000 for interest expense. The city pays interest on property tax installment payments, and with declining interest rates, the budget has been revised for final. We have a $70,000 decrease in the IT software and subscriptions with a change in direction on some of our software licenses. We have a $20,000 decrease for janitorial supplies, mainly in our parks. Parks, Recreation and Culture, contracted instructors. So this was previously not a budget driver. However, you will notice on the next slide, for final, we have increased recreation revenues. This resulted in an additional $4,000 increase over provisional budget for contracted instructors, which brings the change over 2024 to $145,000. We had a $438,000 decrease for the RCMP contract. This includes requested changes to the contract, as well as a delay in the anticipated arrival date of the 4 new members. We have a $116,000 decrease for electricity for our streetlights. This is a new budget driver. Based on 2024 operating results, staff revisited the 2025 operating budget. And finally, on the expenditure side, we have a $171,000 increase for wages and benefits. As when we brought you provisional budget, we did say that we didn't have final benefit rates in. Final benefit rates are now in. That resulted in an increase of approximately $669,000. And then the balance of the change there is due to increases and decreases to a variety of different positions. On the revenue side, we are seeing recreation return to pre-pandemic levels, and for final budget, based on 2024 results, we were able to increase revenue an additional $336,000 over the provisional budget. This figure is shown net of the transfer to the Facility Development Reserve. We had a revenue decrease of $150,000 in building permit revenue from provisional. This is a new budget driver and is based on 2024 operating results. That decline in interest rates helped us in interest expenses, but it also hurt us on investment income, and we did have to drop investment income by another $100,000 over provisional as the interest rates continue to decline. However, we still are anticipating investment income to be above historical returns. Other changes are changes that didn't impact a budget driver. They include increases to the Viera revenue by $20,000 over provisional, changes made to projected casino revenue, increased postage costs, expenses associated with the recreation program revenue, as well as a reduction in council travel expenses, just to name a few examples. And finally, the impact of final growth numbers less final 2024 supplements resulted in a reduction of $303,000 from provisional to the property tax increase. The net change is a decrease of $391,000 or 0.3, which brought us from our provisional 8% down to 7.7% where we sit now. We also had a number of other changes to the budget that didn't impact property taxes. We had changes to the project plan, including adjustments to timing, cost estimates, directions from council, as well as those successful grant applications. Casino revenue, we have seen casino revenue declining over the last few years, and we have reduced our estimate for 2025. This had a slight impact on property taxes. It also decreases the contribution to the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. In the sewer fund, we increased postage costs, as well as we had final benefit rates. And in the water fund, we reduced user-fee revenue based on 2024 results. We increased postage costs, and we had our final benefit rates. And finally, the other change we made is to DCC revenue. 2024, when we had a look at the revenue, we felt that our 2025 estimate was a little high, so we did reduce DCC revenue across all infrastructure types. So at provisional budget, the Finance and Audit Committee deferred decision on 2 budget decision points for final, and we have these 2 items here for you today for your consideration. First, we have public space cleanliness.
Councillor Thorpe has a question, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Bullock. Before we move on, though, I'm just curious, and you can help me out, under casino revenue. As we know, there was a change in ownership of the local casino, and I'm just wondering if that will in any way affect the city's receiving of income revenue. Does the ownership make any difference?
Through the chair to Councillor Thorpe, I have been in touch with BCLC, I think it was I spoke to. At this point, there is no change expected.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
So first up, we have public space cleanliness. Option 1, as a superintendent of sanitation, recycling, and cemeteries, this position would provide additional capacity to oversee public space cleanliness as the department's workload has increased in recent years with the addition of 2 community clean teams. This option includes additional funding in both 2025 and 2026 to engage resources on an as-needed basis to assist with encampment cleanups and other social disorder cleaning services. Under this option, staff would return in a future budget cycle for additional resources such as an additional clean team when it is determined there is insufficient capacity within the current teams. Costing has been updated to reflect a September 1st start date for the position, and contracted services have been decreased for 2026. The estimated property tax impact of this one is 0.06 in 2025, 0.08 in 2026, and minus 0.04 in 2027. The second option for this one is the addition of a 3rd community clean team and the superintendent of sanitation, recycling, and cemeteries in 2026. And we have 2 different funding options for this option. The first funds the required fleet unit and the roll-off bin from the general capital reserve. So you're looking at an impact of 0.22 in 2026 and 0.06 in 2027. The second funding option funds both the operating and capital costs from general revenue. This had an impact of 0.35 in 2026 and minus 0.07 in 2027. And the third option would remain at status quo for now and revisit this in a future budget cycle.
Councillor Perino?
Sorry, Your Worship, just a quick question. I'm looking at the what was in our e-scribe. I can't see that as well, and so I just wanted to ask you a question about the public space cleanliness. 2025 is 0.6, and you've got 0 there. I've got 0.08, and then 2027 minus 0.04. Can you just explain that part again? You just went through it, but I missed some of it. Am I?
Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you. My error.
Yeah,
Thank you.
In my notes, I have 0.06 and then points on the wrong side.
No, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm looking at the options, and I'm looking at the wrong one. That's the problem. I didn't move it up at the same time, so it's my error.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're good to go.
Okay. And then the second decision point that we're revisiting is the increase to the road maintenance budget. Back in January 2024, at the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting, the results of the asphalt levels of service study was presented. A motion was made for council to consider increasing the annual road maintenance budget by 1.5 million during 2025 deliberations. We have 4 options for the committee to consider. Option 1 would increase the road operating maintenance budget by $1 million in 2025 and an additional $500,000 in 2026. The estimated impact is 0.67 in 2025 and 0.26 in 2026. Option 2 increases the budget by $775,000 with an estimated impact of 0.52. And option 3 is to increase the operating budget by $400,000 with an estimated impact of 0.27. Or option 4, we could revisit this in a future budget cycle.
Ms. Mercer, you were going to say something?
Just for the committee's information, an option would be for decision point number 2 is to consider this in 2026 and adding an incremental increase to the budget over the next 4 or 5 years, and that way the impact is less on the budget at this point. As we know, we have some challenges probably for next year, and we're starting at 7.7. So it's just something to consider, is that we look at adding that into the budget cycle for next year.
Thank you. And just to make sure I've got my decimal points in the right place, for instance, if we went for option 3 when it came to road maintenance, the 0.27 would take us to a 7.97 tax increase this year. And if we threw in the what I'll call the cheapest option at public space cleanliness, it would take us to 8.01 tax increase. Ms. Fuller, please, sorry.
You're probably looking at 8% if you went with that option, because you also have the Nanaimo Art Gallery impact that's not included here. So when you factor that in, and then if you went with option 3, you will likely be at 8% for 2025.
So what I'm hearing is if we support any of these options other than maintaining the status quo, we're going to clock in at 8+. Ms. Gurry?
Yeah, just Councillor Gesselbrock has his hand raised.
Yeah. Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thanks, Mayor. Are we taking motions right now?
Take questions for a little bit, but if we're out of questions, we can take a motion. Are there any further questions? Go ahead.
I'd move to keep with the status quo.
Doesn't require a motion. No motion's required for the status quo.
And are you speaking to the road maintenance, Councillor Gesselbrock, or?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If no motion's made with respect to either of the public space cleanliness or the road maintenance, then we move on. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, just so I'm making sure that I have clarity before making a decision. On the public space cleanliness, option 2, essentially that would see the service level increased in 2025, but would be pulling from reserves to pay for the 2025, so there's no budget increase?
Through the chair to Councillor Brown, no, option 2 would add a community clean team in 2026 and a supervisor of sanitation in 2026. So there'd be no additional resources in 2025.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. In general, I do think an additional team is badly needed, probably more than just one, but I don't know what the council appetite on that, but I would just put it out there. I would generally be supportive of increasing. I know we spend a lot of money on CSOs and RCMP, and they do one aspect, but just general city cleanliness, especially in some of our more public spaces, could use a little TLC, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. So am I correct that no motion is on the floor then, because
Correct.
The status quo would not require a motion? Thank you. So I tend to agree with Councillor Brown's comment regarding public space cleanliness. And here we are, middle of April, and we're already starting to make tough budget decisions. To me, I think this is something that is important, and I would support some type of increase there. And I would also point to road maintenance, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seems to me that we have basically skimped and done the minimum amount of road maintenance increase to our budget in recent years. And I point out that all of our goods and services depend on decent roadways to get those services and goods delivered to businesses and consumers in town. So I would ask Mr. Sims if he would make comment on the road maintenance budget and what he sees as I don't want to put him on the spot. Are we behind in our maintenance, Mr. Sims? I'll put it that way, and how can you advise us? Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I can provide a little bit of commentary, but I'd also ask Mr. Thompson to step in. He's attending, or Mr. Elliott are both attending via Zoom, so they could step in to comment a little further. And I think, as has been stated, we're, staff are recognizing the challenge of the financial pressures at all levels. And you may recall back in January of 24, when we brought the level of service study forward, it was, if you want to sort of keep the status quo of we use the measure of a pavement quality index. So if we want to keep that sort of high level of quality that we have, then that was going to require about $1.5 million in investment per year. That's why this decision sort of, kind of come along today. But I think for the most part, our roads are in very good shape. The risk, of course, is that over time, as inflation sort of nicks away at our investment, we do less each year. And so we'll see a decline in pavement quality. But we recognize also that pavement isn't the only asset that we have to deal with, and so it's this balance that we're trying to strike. The recommendations that we've brought forward, and including the one that Ms. Mercer mentioned of slowly incrementally increasing the pavement maintenance budget, is a good compromise, I would suggest, to allow us to do a little bit more each year to make sure that we can preserve the pavement quality. Ultimately, and I wouldn't want to project a time, but ultimately we'll see that the quality of our roads will decline, but those will start with the smaller local roads where there's less impact to the traveling public or commercial goods movement, and our focus will shift more and more to the major roads. But that's kind of a long sort of long-term. I don't know if Mr. Thompson or Mr. Elliott has anything to add to those comments.
As far as I'm concerned, that answer is fulsome, so I appreciate that. And you referenced Ms. Mercer's comments, and I was going to ask her next if she would mind repeating that, because it seemed to me a reasonable option. My feeling is, in any situation, doing nothing is basically falling behind. And I like the idea of incremental, gradual maintenance improvement. So would you mind stating that again, Ms. Mercer?
Through your worship to Councillor Thorpe. So what we could look at when we bring back the 2026 to 2030 financial plan, we could look at giving an option of splitting that increase over, say, 4 or 5 years, and so gradually increasing that budget, say, to $300,000 a year. Or Ms. Fuller will come up with some options there, but we could incrementally increase it over a number of years. That way, we're increasing the budget. We're trying to keep up with, the cost of how things are changing, and that's kind of the gist of what it was.
Thank you. To me, that seems like a good compromise, and it's something that I would be prepared to support at this point. So I don't know if a motion is necessary to have that brought back, Your Worship, or what guidance staff need, or whether council need to vote on this. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you. Through your worship, I think staff will bring back that option in the fall when we start to talk to you about 2026, assuming that council proceeds with the status quo here this morning, because it is absolutely something we need to look at. And we've been fairly consistent in funding that area for a number of years, and with inflation and the additional kilometers of roads we add every year, it just puts, the reality is, as Mr. Sims said this morning, we just do less with the same every year. So we do need to start building up that budget a little bit to reflect the additional demands, but I think we can do that in the fall, and we'll do that without a motion from council.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Himmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. That was my question. I'm content to leave it status quo with options in next year's budget. Regarding the public space cleanliness, I'd like to make a motion if you're open to it. And that is, I'd like to move option 2 with funding source 2A. And if that's seconded, I'd like to ask a question.
Seconded, Councillor Prino, please.
Thank you. So just general commentary, I agree with Councillor Brown. I think this is a really necessary service and one that residents feel an immediate impact from. I prefer to go with the Clean Team program because we're building that rather than going with an independent contractor that we call on as needed basis. Regarding the General Capital Reserve Fund, this would require $220,000, and can you please remind me what our standing balance is there, and if there's anything that is already assigned or coming from that account that we should be aware of as we make this decision?
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, it will bring the general capital balance down to about 4.9-ish million. We have a number of projects already funded from that reserve.
Thank you. So I'm hearing a healthy reserve, so that is moved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock, is your hand fresh as opposed to leftover, please?
Thanks. First question is, would option 2 that's on the floor, this is to staff, give us any increase in capacity in 2025?
Through your worship to Councillor Gesselbrock, no, there will be no increase in 2025.
Okay. I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Brown and Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Thorpe on the need for this type of service. I think it has a large impact, and you know, there is a lot of pressure at the moment. However, the second option, basically, the second option does the same as the first in terms of hiring a superintendent that's needed for the capacity to coordinate the actions. What's different is that in option 1, the superintendent is hired and there is money to immediately start services through contractors, and that it doesn't close the door in later years to actually hire the FTEs to build, you know, a city clean team. But it does provide the option to immediately increase services in 2025 and move forward towards a future clean team with the hiring of that superintendent. Option 2 hires the superintendent plus the 2 FTEs. And I think that just it doesn't provide any increase in services for this year, and it immediately hops into building a team where, you know, potentially it can be covered by an as-needed basis, and it locks us into a certain setup, plus a much higher tax increase in 2026. So I'm opposed to this option, but I would be supportive in increasing our capacity in this with an option 2. Thank you. With the option 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, then Councillor Prino.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Hemmons, putting it on the floor. A question through to staff. I have sort of similar concerns just around the 2025 service, and I'm just wondering, through staff, separately from this motion, if council did want to see an increase in service this year through contractors, could that be funded through some of our more strategic reserves where there's a lot of flexibility? I'm just wondering if there's a way to achieve the motion on the floor, but also see 2025 service.
Through the chair to Councillor Brown. So if council wanted to do some one-time funding for 2025 only, yes, we could look at funding from a reserve. We could look at your strategic infrastructure reserve. Think we have a little left, and so it depends how much you're looking at.
Right.
Then I can give you some options.
Okay, I'm inclined to support the motion on the table and not get too complex with trying to merge everything, but I think there might be some options there to address, I think very rightfully, what Councillor Gesselbrock brings up around this year's service as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prino.
Thank you. A question through you is, so are we using a lot of contract companies for 2025 currently? Just taking from Councillor Brown's comments. For the clean team, I'm sorry.
Your Worship, if I can, maybe provide a little bit of context behind the options as well. Currently, it's a rare event, perhaps a major cleanup that will engage a contractor to do the clean team work. So some of the rationale for the options that we've laid out, one of them is really, we feel at this point we have a little bit of capacity within the clean team to function, to support the CSOs as needed. Where we're struggling with capacity is in the supervision. We have a supervisor now that's looking after close to 20 staff, and that's spread far, far too thin, and that's really impacting our ability to provide the service. So that was the rationale for the first option, and then we can limp along that way for another year for the second option. And so at this point, we just felt that for the first option, if the need was there this year, then we could engage some contracted services. It's not something that we do on a habitual manner.
Okay, thank you. And if I might ask a second question, on this option number 2, it says 2026 general reserve, general capital reserve, 219,500. We are still, that's, assuming this passes, that's going to go in, and we're still going to have a 0.22% tax impact, is that correct?
That is through the chair to Councillor Perino. Okay. Yes, that is correct. So with option 2A for number 1, this would bring you to just a smidge under 8% for 2026, if this option is selected.
I'm actually struggling with the option 1 or 2. Any final thoughts, Ms. Mercer, from what is the better way to go?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm putting you in a position.
Mr. Lindsay.
We'll let Laura off the hook maybe a little bit, but I would just, Your Worship, from my perspective, I think from where staff stand, the first priority is to get extra support in that working group with the superintendent position.
Okay.
So the benefit of option 1 is it actually allows us to proceed with that relatively quickly. The second thing, the benefit of option 1 is it allows us to put some additional resources in there that just gives some additional capacity for 2025. And then, as I think was mentioned here this morning, if we could achieve both those things, I think then you could reevaluate in 2026 and beyond whether you wanted to actually expand the team. But it would certainly, that option 1 would do the most important thing. Well, they both do, but option 1 does the combination of getting that superintendent in and getting them in more quickly.
And one more quick question. In option 2, under the motion, fund the community clean team fleet unit and roll off bin from the general capital reserve, but you do not have that in option number 1. And just to give you some context, this morning between Alds Road and Turner, there's a big cleanup going on there with a bin out, and you can see like there's 4 or 5 trucks. Like it's a big job. So I'm just wondering if we vote this down and go back to option 1, does that mean you do not get that that you have in option 2? Sorry, I'm going back and forth.
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, correct. Option 1 is just a position, so a supervisor, as well as some additional funding for contracted services. Option 2 adds the supervisor, the clean team members, as well as resources of clean team members to actually need to do their job, which would be a vehicle to get around and a roll-off bin to support the cleanup that they're doing.
Okay.
Option number 1 allows for some extra money to be spent this year and to hire a superintendent. Option, what we're voting on, is an option that makes no change until next year. Just to be clear.
That's certainly my struggle because you realize we need it now. So thank you very much. I'll keep considering this. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've actually been convinced to vote in opposition to my motion, and primarily because I'm hearing Mr. Sims say that we have capacity in our current team, but where we really struggle is in the supervisor position. So that, for me, is enough. So I will be voting against. Thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Your Worship. I too will be voting against, for all the reasons Councillor Hemmons outlined. And I think Councillor Gisselbrock and Mr. Sims highlighted that going with option 1 doesn't preclude visiting option 2 the next budget cycle and essentially converting what's done here today into that longer-term structural option. So for that reason, I will vote against this and hope we get the other one on the floor.
Thank you. And just to be clear, the impact of voting this down and presumably going with option number 1 is that the tax increase will be 7.76%, not including anything else. Ms. Mercer.
Yes, the increase would be, and we only go to 1 decimal, so it would be 7.8%. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor of the motion on the table? And those opposed?
Sorry, guys.
This is great. Well, at least it's unanimous. Would someone care to make what I suspect is going to be the Councillor Prino? That is option 1, an increase of 0.06% this year, 0.08 in 2026, and negative 0.4. And Councillor Thorpe seconds. Any need for further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. If there's next steps, then Ms. Fuller?
Yes, so staff will go back and make that change to the budget, and then we will come back on May 5th with the 2025 to 2029 financial plan amendment, as well as the 2025 property tax increase or property tax bylaw for first 3 readings, with adoption for May 12th in time to make the May 15th deadline.
Thank you very much. Much appreciate Councillor Thorpe. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Before we leave this, Your Worship, if I may, I just need to make a comment through you to staff. Yesterday we had a meeting of the Regional District of Nanaimo, a workshop rather than a meeting. But the discussion at some point centered around the budget process for the RDN, and there was some healthy, constructive criticism of that process. And I need to point out that the City of Nanaimo was pointed to as having a model for budget discussions and budget process, which was the envy of people in the room there. Now, I recognize the RDN budget is much more complicated, I think it's fair to say, than the city budget. However, in terms of our timeline and how we approach topics and budget decision points, there was a lot of favorable comment and compliments to the City of Nanaimo, so I pass those along to our staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thorpe. Well done. All right, we are back to the agenda. Item 8, delegations. We have none. The next is reports. It says 6, but that must be 9. The approval to bid to host the 2026 Pacific Contact Showcase and Festival. Ms. Osborne, Ms. Mercer-Breen, good morning. Welcome both.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The purpose of the report before you is to request a financial commitment from Council regarding the proposed bid to host the 2026 Pacific Contact Showcase and Festival. Pacific Contact is a BC Live Performance Network annual showcase and festival for the performing arts. Pacific Contact has been held in Burnaby for the last 20 years. However, since 2023, New Westminster, Kelowna have hosted, and Granville Island, Vancouver will host this year. Representatives from Pacific Contact have reached out to David Warburton, the Artistic Executive Director of the Port Theatre, to see if Nanaimo would be interested to bid for the 2026 event. Mr. Warburton has reached out to the City of Nanaimo, Vancouver Island Conference Centre, and Tourism Nanaimo to determine if there is support for the bid. Mr. Warburton is in the gallery this morning, as well as Ms. Bethel from Tourism Nanaimo. Vancouver Island has never hosted Pacific Contact. A successful bid would be unprecedented opportunity for island-based artists to attend and would bring visitors to Nanaimo, generate significant event spending in the downtown core. Direct spending in Pacific Contact host communities is estimated at $345,000, with direct spending, event spending estimated at $125,000, bringing visitors who are estimated to spend about $75,000. The recommendation is that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council support the proposed bid to host Pacific Contact 2026 in Nanaimo and commit $20,000 in 2026 of the 2025-2029 financial plan funded through the Special Initiatives Reserve. Myself and Ms. Breen, Manager of Culture and Special Events, are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe, or am I?
That's an old one.
Old one, thank you. Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Perino.
Thank you very much. Through you to staff. This looks really interesting. The website's really great. I can see the benefit. How would residents access this conference? Or is it just for the artistic community? Or like, are there free performances? Is everything at the port? I just want to know the interface with Nanaimo residents.
Through your worship, this showcase and festival is really meant to draw the culture community together in the communities that it comes to. There are opportunities for local artists to present at the conference, and there are also opportunities for communication and collaboration and relationship building for local community, and there are components available to local community. I'm going to ask if Mr. Warburton can come forward. He has attended multiple Pacific Contact conferences and will be able to shed more light for you.
Good morning, welcome.
Hello. Yes, there's an opportunity for the public to attend some of it. Anyone can register to attend, and typically there's an additional incentive for young people and early professionals to access through a number of subsidies and price points. In addition to that, Pacific Contact has a number of showcases. Some of those are open to the public, especially the outdoor performances that happen.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, and a question through you. So what we're being asked for is $20,000 2026, 27, 28, and 29. Is that correct?
Through your worship, it's for 2026.
Just for the 1 year?
Yes.
Well, this is a no-brainer. I'd love to put this on the floor, put the motion on the floor, and if I get a seconder, I'd speak to it.
Seconded by Councillor Brown already.
You know, talk about a great initiative. I can't thank you enough for bringing this forward to us. I think this is incredible for not only those artists, but for our community and what it does for the hotels and the restaurants and the shopping. Bring it on. Can't wait. Thank you so much. Hope we vote in favor of this one.
I'm not seeing any questions or further speakers. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the attendance this morning. The next is the B Sport Tourism Grant Funding Application Approval. Ms. Osborne, please.
Sorry. Mayor and Council, the purpose of the report before you is to seek Finance and Audit Committee approval to use funds from the Sport Tourism Grant for supporting events that are impacted by the timeline of the Municipal Regional Tax, the MRDT, fund transfer. The first free ride mountain bike event was held in Nanaimo in 2023 at the Steve Smith Bike Park. The event is a bronze level competition attracting 50 amateur and professional riders and approximately 400 spectators who come from Vancouver Island, BC mainland, other provinces, and international areas. The event has received funding from the MRDT grant for the last 2 events, or 2 years. However, with the transition of the MRDT administration from Nanaimo Hospitality to the Tourism Nanaimo, the application timeline change has subsequently impacted the event, as it will happen before the grant award can be determined. To help bridge the funding, and for this one time only, staff are recommending that the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that Council approve granting the Vancouver Island Slopestyle 2025 event at Steve Smith Bike Park $4,500 from the Sport Tourism Grant Fund.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons,
Happy to move this.
seconded Councillor Perino. Any discussion? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a quick question, if I may. I'm happy to support this, but I'm just curious. The reason for this is because of the shifting in the administration of the MRDT funding, and it affects the timing. And I'm wondering, do we have any idea of how many other potential groups could be similarly affected and therefore might be coming to us?
Good question.
Through His Worship to Councillor Thorpe, I'm only aware of this one particular event. However, I might reference to Ms. Mercer to see if she has had any through Tourism Nanaimo.
Ms. Mercer.
Through your worship to Councillor Thorpe, I'm not aware of any sport-related grant that Tourism Nanaimo has been approached with. This one in particular, we felt we had a grant stream that could facilitate it this year for this organization. Not everybody that comes looking for money, is there an available stream through the city? So we do realize that with the transition, there's some bumps along the way until they can get the process up and running. But I haven't been aware of any other sport grants that have come like this.
All right, thank you very much. I'm hopeful that if there are some other bumps that we come across or hear about, that we can have discussion about helping smooth those out as well. I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Thorpe for asking that question. Following that, is this fund exhausted throughout the year? Has it reached its capacity? I'm just thinking these are tournament travel funds for teams. Just want to make sure we're not, jeopardizing that for youth.
Through His Worship to Councillor Hemmons, we have not depleted it fully the last 3 years. We have used it for other events such as the Junior All Native basketball tournament, different sort of Coastal Age Games, I believe, different events that come up that require additional funding to support them.
Thank you. And last question, what is the window of time we're dealing with where we could have these requests for applications or funding that MRDT would typically cover? Like, is this a 2-month window that we might have to smooth the bumps, as Councillor Thorpe suggests?
Through your worship to Councillor Hemmons, yes, it's just a couple of months. And this one it happens before any grant determination would happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Again, none. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is the Seven Potatoes Project update and funding request. Ms. Osborne again, please. And Ms. Davis, welcome. Good morning.
The report before you today is an update and funding request for the projects the City of Nanaimo is partnering with the Central Vancouver Island Japanese Canadian Society, Seven Potatoes, on. Ms. Charlotte Davis, our Deputy Director for Parks and Natural Areas, is here today to provide an update and speak to the report. Ms. Tammy Hirasawa from the Seven Potatoes is also here to speak as a delegation. Ms. Davis.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with this topic today. We have prepared a report that provides an overview of our work with the Seven Potatoes and progress to date, and the request for additional funding for 2 of these projects. So City staff and representatives of Seven Potatoes, led by Ms. Hirasawa, have applied for several grants in partnership from the Japanese Canadian Legacy Society. 3 of these partnership applications have been successful, bringing a total of $1.35 million worth of investment to our community. The project that is furthest along is the redevelopment of Room 6 at Beban Park, which is due to be completed in the next 2 weeks. This will be used for Japanese cultural programming, including taiko drumming. And that project received $250,000 from the Japanese Canadian Legacy Society and was delivered by the PRC facilities team in partnership with the Seven Potatoes. The 2 projects that we're seeking funding for today are the Japanese Canadian Memorial Garden Project and the Beban Park Outdoor Performance and Gathering Space. The Memorial Garden Project will create a BC heritage site in Nanaimo's downtown waterfront. This will be a commemorative and reflective space inspired by Japanese-Canadian landscape architecture and will potentially tell the story of the Japanese-Canadian herring fisheries that were prevalent in our community prior to World War II. So with this one, we've undertaken some project budgeting and scoping work, and the final location, though, is not yet confirmed. Our best estimates at this stage see the project being valued around $741,000, which includes a 15% contingency. With the Bevan Park project, which is the gathering and performance space, we've scoped it out, and a latest budgeting exercise sees this project valued around $1.1 million. The project will create a performance and gathering and commemorative space which is adjacent to room 6. The combined ask today is $741,000 for both projects. Ms. Hirasawa is here from Seven Potatoes with a brief presentation, and we are both available if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Hirasawa. You'll have 5 minutes, and when there's a minute left, I'll let you know if you're still talking.
Red. Does it go green? Is it live? Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing me to address this committee on the traditional ancestral territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nations, who've been stewards of this land from its time immemorial, and who continue to be important members of our community. In the early 1900s, Nanaimo's Japanese Canadians established over 43 herring salteries around Nanaimo Harbor and Departure Bay. A busy Japanese Canadian community thrived along Stewart Avenue, and a Japanese language school was built at the corner of Juniper and Stewart Avenue. The Nanaimo Japanese Canadian community made significant economic contributions to the city and province, and yet endured forced uprooting, incarceration, permanent dispossession, and displacement. In 1942, all Canadians of Japanese descent were forcibly uprooted and permanently stripped of their homes, businesses, and belongings, and relocated to internment camps outside coastal BC area and displaced across the country, with many exiled to Japan. The majority of the uprooted Canadians were born in BC. Both of my parents were born on the coast of BC, forcibly uprooted, and spent time in sugar beet fields in southern Alberta. We have several survivors of the Japanese-Canadian World War II experience living here in Nanaimo. Some are here in the audience today. This history of what happened to Japanese-Canadian communities in BC is still relatively unknown, and the Japanese-Canadian Legacy Society Fund provides support to key building, renovation, and construction projects that preserve and honor the legacy of Japanese Canadians from BC who were impacted by the historic events. So Nanaimo has been awarded $400,000 for the Nanaimo Japanese Canadian Heritage Project and $700,000 towards the Nikkei Legacy Performing, Gathering, and Commemorating Project at Bevan. And as Ms. Davis talked about, the Heritage Project will create a reflective Japanese garden that tells the story of the Japanese Canadian community. And the Performing, Gathering, Commemorating space at Bevan will provide an outdoor performing arts space with a stage and seating area that will also serve as a picnic and gathering space for everyone to use, and will provide Japanese Canadian signage around the space. There's currently no Japanese Canadian historic signs, gathering spaces, or cultural centers on central Vancouver Island. These two projects in Nanaimo are intended to help everyone. We want to make Nanaimo visible to the next generation so that everyone can enjoy the space and learn to appreciate the lasting legacies of Japanese Canadians. We're asking the city to support these projects by adding $341,000 to the Heritage Project and $400,000 to the Outdoor Performing Arts Gathering and Commemorating Project. I'm willing to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well under time. Councillor Brown?
Mine's for staff.
Okay. You may sit down, please.
Oh, okay, thanks.
The presentation. Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just have One question with, two questions related to one project, and that's the performing space. Why was Bevan Park chosen, and where at Bevan Park is it?
Bevan, through the chair, Bevan Park was selected off the back of the Room 6 project.
Okay.
There's a really great opportunity to piggyback there. We have the taiko drumming and the Japanese-Canadian programming going on inside Room 6. And so the area that we've looked to the project is the green space just outside of Room 6 that will allow for those drums to be brought outside and for to be a real taiko drumming performance space. But it's also something that's been part of Bevan Park Master Plan as well, the need to have more picnicking and gathering space in the park. So it's a great opportunity to kill two birds with one stone.
Okay, and follow-up question. There's no proposed pickleball courts near this performing space that's gonna create a bunch of noise that we're gonna hear about 10 years from now?
Through the chair, at this time, there's no plans for any
Okay.
pickleball courts in that area.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you so much. It's at the north end, is that correct? At the north end of Bevan, right?
Correct.
And will it be sorry, I should have said through the chair, it will be a permanent, is that correct?
Yes, through the chair.
Right, okay. And can you just explain the funding model that we're looking at? This funding is to come out of the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve. Is that just for 2025 and 2026, or is that throughout?
I'll refer that to finance.
It's under financial considerations in the report. Just funding would be from the Strategic Infrastructure Reserve and revised projected closing balances of the reserve if funding is approved. So I'm wanting to make sure that, you know, is this money that we have in reserves, is this new tax dollars that we have to tax for? I'm trying to figure out just exactly how that would work.
Ms. Fuller, we've got the money in the bank, and it's not going to increase the tax increase this year.
But not just for this year, is it for the future years?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, so the capital costs are coming out of the reserve in 2025 and 2026, but of course, if there's any operating costs associated with maintaining the facilities in the Memorial Garden, that would impact Parks' operation budget in future budget cycles.
Okay, but we're not being asked for that at this time, so there's no tax dollars being required at this time. We just take from reserves. That makes a big difference. Thank you so much.
We're still under 8, mercifully. Would someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Let me just say very briefly and quickly, my sister-in-law's parents and her older siblings were interned. And so in terms of my strong personal feelings about this, I am so pleased that we have had such an active Seven Potatoes Society here in Nanaimo that pursued the grants, and I'm so pleased that Council has chosen to support the recognition, which is noted in the staff report, named Nanaimo as the herring capital. This is a very significant part of our history that has been somewhat forgotten, as Ms. Kurosawa has pointed out, but like many things in life, over time you get to see everything revealed and understood in the context of the history of this province and the significant contribution of the Japanese-Canadian community. So I'm delighted to support this. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Hard to follow those good words, but I do just want to acknowledge this group, and their ability to attract funding to the city is phenomenal. I don't know of anyone else bringing in these numbers, so happy to support today. Thank you.
All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Glad you're not here with some other folks, Tammy. I'd have to shut you down for clapping in chambers. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize, I see you brought out the big gun this morning, former city staff, Mr. Sujiyama, welcome. All right. We have no other business. Question period, I'm sure we have none. Motion for adjournment, moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you very much to everyone who took time to attend this morning, staff or public, and appreciate the